Hello and welcome to GBN Originals with me, Darren Grimes. Well, our next guest needs no introduction, my friends. It is, of course, former Prime Minister Liz Truss. Liz, thank you very much for giving up your time. You've got a very busy schedule, I know. You're jetting off to America.
That's right, yes, for CPAC.
Now that's going to be fun, but our conference, pretty important stuff. Yesterday, Kemi Badenoch was here, and she said the Conservatives are the next MAGA movement. I mean, would you agree with that sentiment? It certainly ought to be the next MAGA movement.
I think there's some way to go. And I think the key thing is that, whoever gets into government in 2029 has to massively overhaul our country and overhaul the state, because we're in a disastrous situation. People are being thrown in jail for Facebook posts, but we've got these appalling grooming gangs who have raped tens of thousands of girls. They've not all been brought to justice. It's been covered up. We've got a disastrous economy which is going down the drain, and it's not just Rachel Reeves is incompetent, which she is. It's also the Bank of England, the Office of Budget Responsibility, the Treasury. They're all responsible. So I think a MAGA movement in Britain has to be about completely changing the way our country is run. We've got to get rid of all this Blairite stuff like the Human Rights Act, the Climate Change Act, the Constitutional Reform Act, which created the Supreme Court. I mean, why are judges making political decisions like which refugees should be allowed into our country? They shouldn't be making those decisions. So what I'm saying, Darren, is what's really important to me is that the movement is actually calling for that kind of change, because that's how bad it is. The British state is deeply rotten.
Well, I agree with that, Liz, but this morning the UK's highest ranking official in the judiciary has condemned both Kemi Badenoch and Sir Keir Starmer for their criticism of the judge's decision on the Gazan family to come to Britain. I think actually we do have an activist judiciary in this country. How concerned are you about that? Because even in America, you're seeing a judicial pushback against much of what the Trump agenda is trying to get through.
I'm very concerned about it, and I was Justice Secretary.
Yeah.
I had the same flack from the judges because I refused to condemn the Daily Mail for running an article against them. I think we believe in free speech in this country. We believe in a free press. But the judiciary want to try and stamp out any criticism, and I think that's completely wrong. This is why the Constitutional Reform Act is so important. We've got to give the Lord Chancellor, a cabinet minister, the real power to appoint the judges, because what's happened is the judges are appointing themselves, and they're getting increasingly out of touch with what the British public want. They're getting increasingly involved in political decisions, and it's completely wrong.
There were some of these judges who were appointed by Conservative ministers. I'm not suggesting it was you, but Alex Chalk, for example, would be one where I clocked one judge who made a really quite controversial decision.
They weren't really appointed by him. That's the point.
Yeah.
The Lord Chancellor is involved.
Yes.
But they're very substantial to the process.
I see.
What Blair did is he created this thing called the Judicial Appointment System, which is a quango, and he also got the Lord Chief Justice and the quango to be involved in the selection of the judges. Prior to that, it was always the cabinet minister who made the decision. The powers have been completely removed. So Alex Chalk was just fronting up for a rotten system. That's the problem.
So you would strip that power from the judiciary and hand it to
the Lord
politician,
Chancellor,
who is, of course, accountable to the people.
The Prime Minister appoints the Lord Chancellor appoints the judges. Our system is based on the idea of parliamentary sovereignty, that the people who are elected in Parliament are the people who are responsible for doing things. But the system has got completely balkanised, mainly by Tony Blair. We had 1,000 years. We had the Lord Chancellor appointing judges. We had the senior judges sat in the House of Lords. They were all part of Parliament. Blair got rid of that. He wanted a Europeanised system. It's been a disaster, and it needs to be got rid of. So this is what I want to see people like Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage committing to. They've got to commit to that type of change. It's not good enough just to criticise the decision. What they've got to say is they're actually going to get rid of that law that has made our system so bad.
I know in your updated version of your book, you actually say, look,
10 years to save the West.
10 years to
available
save the West,
at
yes.
all
In
good
all good
bookshops and
of
on
course,
Amazon.
of course,
Yes.
ding dong. Now, you argue that actually there will have to be some form of rapprochement between the Conservatives and the Reform Party at some juncture, wherever that might look like. How concerned are you that egos will get in the way and that won't happen, and then you find that we've got another 5 years of a Lib Dem coalition?
What I think is really important, there is a popular movement to actually change Britain. So what we've seen in America is the Tea Party, the MAGA movement. That's put the pressure on. That's what created the sort of momentum behind Donald Trump. And that's what we need in Britain. I want people in Britain to actually understand what's wrong with our country. It's not good enough to just say, we'll vote this politician in, this politician out, when all the big jobs are not elected. You know, we don't elect the Bank of England governor, and the Prime Minister doesn't really get to appoint who they want. We don't elect the judges, and the Lord Chancellor doesn't get to appoint who they want. And so you've got this bureaucratic baggage that whoever you vote for, you're ending up with the same people actually running the country. That's what's got to change. And I think it isn't just about the politicians, it's about the public actually protesting against this. And you know, we've seen the start of that with the farmers' protests, with people protesting about the grooming gangs. We need more pressure from below. That's what we need.
And what form does that take? Do you think there has to be a sort of Trump-like figure that comes along and starts this kind of people-based movement?
I think you're seeing it happening organically, but I think it's what I'm trying to throw into the debate here is to say, if you want Britain to change, you need to repeal all these laws.
Yeah.
We're not gonna have the Britain you and I want to see, Darren, until the Human Rights Act is repealed, until the Constitutional Reform Act is repealed, until the Supreme Court is abolished, and we get back to the British system that actually works.
No, I couldn't agree more. But the Doge-style reforms,
Love it.
right?
I love it.
They're
Do you know
great.
the thing I love most is
Yes.
the way Elon has gone in and looked at the payment system. He's looked at the way where the money is going. That is so vital.
But we can do that ourselves, right? We can go through companies, the amount of taxpayer cash that has just been thrown at these quite radical activists, for example. And Charlotte Gill, the independent journalist, has been doing great work documenting all of these things. 14 years of Conservative government, Liz, and we were just splashing money at these activist outlets.
This goes back to the point I was making about the bureaucracy.
Yes.
Because a lot of times, ministers don't have any say in those decisions.
Right.
Because they're outsourced to an independent body. They say that civil servants have to make the decisions because we don't want it to be political.
So you wouldn't argue it's a failure of government, as in ministers, it's a failure of the blob?
It's a failure of the system, and the Conservative failure was not to repeal all those laws.
Yeah.
So the failure was not to repeal the Human Rights Act, the Equality Act, not to make the civil service accountable like they have done in America. That was the failure. But you know, the bad decisions like giving money to crazy transgender ideology, that's just a result of a bad system. But the Conservative failure was the failure not to change the system. That was the original sin.
Just finally then, you're off to NatCon. Would you argue...
It's CPAC.
CPAC. You're off to CPAC. Now, would you argue that actually, as many guests have said at this conference, that actually the United Kingdom is just 4 years behind America?
Let's hope so.
I hope
I can't
so.
wait
Please,
any longer.
Liz, give me hope. Give me hope.
I mean, like, can you imagine if we're here in 2034 and we've still got these clowns in government?
We'll
and
be in a
still
gulag. That's what'll happen.
Yeah.
You and I,
I'm
Liz.
prepared to do that for my country, Darren. I don't know about you.
I absolutely am. Right, Liz, have the most marvellous time
Thank you
at
very
CPAC.
much. Thank
I'm
you.
sure you will.
I will report back.
Yes,
as
I want to
get
know
back.
everything that goes on. All right, Liz Truss, thank you very much.
Thanks, Darren.